Welcome to the Finely Tuned Infrastructure Podcast by Rhythmic Technologies. Usually when a revolutionary new tool enters the workplace, the promise we're sold is just incredibly simple.
Right. It's always, the machine does the heavy lifting
Yeah,
and you get your time back.
exactly. You
Yeah.
get to breathe. You finally get to actually leave the office at 5. But if you look at the teams who are adopting new technology the absolute hardest right now, that is definitively not the reality.
No, it's the exact opposite of what we've all been promised. Instead of having more free time, the infrastructure and development teams leaning in the most are somehow more swamped, more stressed out, and stretched thinner than they have ever been in their entire careers.
Yeah. And today, our mission is to figure out exactly why that is happening. We are exploring a truly fascinating phenomenon outlined in Rhythmic's blog post titled The AI Paradox: Why the Heaviest AI Users Are Also the Busiest.
It's such a great read.
It really is. It explores this massive contradiction in modern work. Like, why is a technology designed specifically to save time, causing teams to work harder, longer, and honestly just more chaotically than ever before?
Right. And to set the stage for this, the blog introduces a foundational concept, and it comes directly from Rhythmic CEO Chris Danilic. He observed a behavioral pattern that perfectly captures the core of this paradox.
Mm-hmm.
He pointed out that we now have this incredible tool that can solve all the problems we currently have. And yet, human nature being what it is, we are irresistibly drawn to using it to solve all the problems we previously had.
Okay, let's unpack this because that is such a strange, almost counterintuitive psychological quirk.
It really is.
It's like finally getting a high-speed sports car. But instead of, I don't know, driving forward on the open highway, you immediately turn the car around to drive over all the potholes you intentionally avoided for the last 5 years.
That's a great way to put it.
Right. Like, why do we do this? What is the actual mechanism driving that gravitational pullback to old problems?
Well, to understand that pull, we really have to look at the reality of how businesses functioned before AI arrived. The blog explains that historically your backlog of broken things was essentially self-regulating.
Self-regulating, how so?
Well, every single company operating in the cloud or managing complex infrastructure has those processes that are just clunky. They're annoying, they cause daily friction, but they aren't catastrophic.
Oh, right. The classic technical debt, the stuff your engineering team just learns to live with because the alternative is, worse.
Exactly. They stayed clunky because fixing them required more time, more effort, and more money than the daily pain justified.
Yeah, you just ignore it.
Right. You made peace with the friction. Your team built elaborate workarounds. You relied entirely on the institutional knowledge of that one veteran staff member who knew exactly where all the bodies were buried just to keep things moving.
Yes, every company has that one person.
Always. And it was a massive pileup of inefficiencies, but it was a manageable one because ignoring it was mathematically the most cost-effective business decision.
It was almost like a protective barrier. Like, the sheer economic cost of fixing the clunky process protected the team from actually having to do the work. The friction itself was the shield.
Precisely. And the paradigm shift we're living through right now is that AI completely blew that economic logic up.
Wow. Yeah.
The blog points out that technical or operational tasks, which previously required a dedicated quarter of someone's time,
Quarter.
yeah, a whole quarter, can now get solved in a single afternoon.
Which instantly zeroes out the cost of fixing the friction. I mean, our brains instantly reprioritize the potholes.
Yes. Suddenly, every single item that was quietly rotting on the someday maybe list just became highly actionable.
Because you can actually do it now.
Right. Your team can see that the barrier of effort is gone.
Yeah.
They feel it. Yeah. And so they naturally go after those legacy issues because they finally have the means to conquer them.
That makes so much sense.
But, and that's only half the story, at the very same time you are unearthing the past, AI opens up entirely new possibilities.
Oh, of course.
Work that was never on any list, never on any roadmap,
Yep.
because it used to be literally impossible for your current headcount.
So you are simultaneously excavating the entire history of ignored problems while looking at an entirely new horizon of unprecedented opportunities.
Okay.
I mean, if you're listening to this on your commute right now and feeling completely buried under like 3 different AI initiatives at your company, this is why.
Yeah. It creates what the blog calls a massive compounding net new appetite for work. The self-regulating backlog is gone forever, and it's replaced by a limitless appetite.
And what is so compelling is how that appetite actually manifests in the day-to-day operations of a company. Because everything is suddenly actionable, teams inevitably fall into a structural trap.
They do.
And Rhythmic's blog post categorizes this chaos into exactly 3 overlapping buckets of work. If you are feeling overwhelmed, you are likely drowning in one or all of these buckets. Let's start with bucket 1, past work.
What's fascinating here is how the exact framework breaks down. Bucket 1 is all about retrofitting pre-AI decisions.
Mm.
It is the arduous work of cleaning up those old processes we just talked about, the legacy infrastructure held together by manual steps, tribal knowledge, and as the blog brilliantly puts it, a healthy dose of bubblegum, duct tape, and prayers.
Wait, let me challenge that for a second. If AI is so incredibly advanced at pattern recognition, why can't it just scan our messy legacy infrastructure, look at the code repository, and figure out the workarounds itself? Like, why is this bucket so difficult?
That's the trap, because the AI doesn't know why the duct tape is there.
Oh.
The profound irony of Bucket 1 is the hidden cost. AI finally makes fixing these things tractable, but it is certainly not free.
Right.
Retrofitting the past requires your absolute most knowledgeable people to drive the initiative.
Yeah.
You cannot fix what you cannot fully describe to the AI.
I see. The AI might recognize a strange script, but it doesn't know that the script was written 5 years ago to bypass a specific firewall issue that no longer exists,
Exactly.
but that another system now somehow relies on.
Exactly. Only the veteran employee possesses that historical context.
Right.
So the veteran employee, your most valuable, expensive, and critical team member, is the one pulled away from building new features to explain the history of the bubblegum and duct tape to the machine. It creates a massive bottleneck.
Which brings us crashing into bucket 2, present work. Because while your top engineers are retrofitting the past, the engine of the business is still running.
It never stops.
Right. Clients still expect their deliverables, daily operations continue. The present work doesn't pause.
It doesn't. Bucket 2 is your actual job, just running faster.
Yeah.
But here is where teams stumble. The blog makes a vital distinction about how AI functions in this present work bucket.
Okay.
AI should accelerate your daily operations, but mostly it only does so if your team has genuinely learned how to delegate to it.
Here's where it gets really interesting because the blog separates this into 2 distinct behaviors. Using AI as an expensive Google versus actually delegating a task with context. How does the blog define that difference?
It is a massive difference in mechanics. When you use AI as an expensive Google, you are just asking it a question.
Like a search engine.
Right. A developer might ask an LLM for the correct syntax for a specific bash script. The AI gives you the snippet, but the execution, the testing, the implementation that still sits squarely on your human shoulders.
Ah, so you are still doing the work, just slightly faster.
Yeah. You haven't actually removed anything from your plate.
Wow. Yeah, that's so true.
Exactly. Conversely, delegating a task with context means giving the AI a bounded task and enough access to close the loop.
What does that look like in practice?
It means saying, here's the context of our environment, here's the specific JIRA ticket, write the script, test it against our parameters, and close the issue. Delegating actually removes the work.
Because it finishes the job.
Yes. If your team is only doing the former, the expensive Google Bucket 2 is just making them pedal faster on the same bicycle.
Man, and while they are pedaling faster, they are staring right at bucket 3, future work.
The net new scope.
The shiny new objects. This is where you start dreaming about spinning up complex automated workflows, predictive infrastructure scaling, or, agentic AI that acts on your behalf.
It's the most exciting bucket by far.
Yeah.
This is where the massive leaps forward happen for a department or a business.
Absolutely.
But the blog warns that Bucket 3 is exactly where dangerous scope creep lives, precisely because it is so thrilling.
It's seductive.
It is. It is incredibly tempting to abandon the mundane reality of Bucket 1 and 2 to chase the revolutionary promise of Bucket 3.
So, to summarize the trap here,
Mm-hmm.
we have past work consuming our most knowledgeable veteran engineers. We have present work speeding up our daily deliverables but demanding we learn new delegation skills. And we have future work constantly tempting us with endless new scope and shiny objects.
Yep. And here is the core structural problem.
Hmm.
Most companies have absolutely no framework for prioritizing which of those 3 buckets gets their attention.
None at all.
Right. Without a strict framework, they do what humans naturally do when faced with conflicting, highly compelling priorities. They do all 3 simultaneously, all the time.
And the result of running all 3 simultaneously is that you attempt everything, and you complete absolutely nothing. You just end up more exhausted than ever.
Yes. Running all three buckets at once is the perfect recipe for organizational burnout and zero completed projects.
If that is the trap, and I guarantee thousands of people listening right now are nodding their heads because they are living inside that trap, how do the companies that actually succeed with AI avoid it? Like, how do you navigate having a limitless appetite when your resources are still, at the end of the day, finite?
The antidote, according to Rhythmic's blog post, is discipline and deliberate sequencing.
Sequencing.
Right. It is not about doing less overall. It is about making a highly deliberate choice regarding which bucket gets resourced when, and sticking to that choice long enough to actually finish something before moving on.
But the pull to do them all at once is just so incredibly strong. The blog even uses a pop culture reference to explain this feeling, right?
It does, and it is a perfect comparison. The blog references the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once to describe the very real, totally justified pull teams feel in this paradox.
It really does feel like that.
Think about the internal logic of a team caught in this.
Yeah.
The past work feels urgent because the broken foundation is actively blocking your future work.
Right.
The future work is incredibly exciting because it is what AI is meant for, and it is the only way to propel yourself ahead of the competition.
Yeah, you don't want to fall behind.
Exactly. And you cannot stop the present work because that is how the lights stay on and payroll gets met.
It is a perfect storm. Everything is urgent, everything is important, everything is everywhere all at once. So what does this all mean for a manager or a director trying to fix it? Can't we just solve this with better time management? Because a really common corporate band-aid for this kind of overwhelming transition is just calendar blocking. Can't we just mandate that everyone gets, say, 4 hours of dedicated calendar time a week to work on their AI projects and just call it a day?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the blog addresses that exact corporate strategy and explains why it falls completely short.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Individual time blocking absolutely has benefits. Giving people dedicated space to work with AI, away from the constant Slack messages and interruptions of their current work, definitely yields better individual output and faster learning curves.
Sure, you need focus time.
But here is the critical failure of that approach. Time blocking at the individual level completely fails to solve the sequencing problem at the company portfolio level.
Because everyone is just working on their own isolated piece of the puzzle in a vacuum?
Exactly. You give 50 engineers 4 hours a week, and instead of one massive finished infrastructure project, you end up with, like, 50 half-finished, unintegrated initiatives. And zero meaningful completion for the business. The discipline to sequence work cannot just exist on a personal calendar. It must exist at the portfolio level.
Which exposes a major structural flaw in how most companies are operating right now. They're treating AI adoption as a personal productivity tool rather than a massive portfolio management challenge.
It does. The blog identifies a massive, glaring gap in modern companies navigating this transition. They need a specific role to own this sequence.
All role.
Yeah. Many companies are discovering, through painful trial and error, that they're missing a role they didn't even know they needed.
Let's get really practical here. What does that person actually do? How does this gatekeeper role function in reality?
Someone has to own the sequence. This is a person whose specific job is understanding exactly where AI can actually close a loop in the business. They operate at the portfolio level. In a sprint planning meeting, they have to make sure the work is properly resourced, that it's successfully handed off, and perhaps most importantly, they have to fiercely protect the team from opening the next bucket before the current one is entirely finished.
So they are the ones who have to look a VP in the eye during a planning meeting and say, no, we are not building that predictive AI model right now because we are still retrofitting the legacy database.
Agreed.
They are the gatekeeper of the buckets.
Precisely. They enforce the discipline of finishing, they manage the appetite.
Bringing this from theory into immediate practice for the listener, if someone is listening to this and wondering if their department is secretly failing at this, how do they diagnose if their team is caught in this exact paradox?
The blog provides a fantastic, simple diagnostic question. It is something you should ask out loud in your very next planning meeting.
Let's hear it.
The question is, which bucket are we working from right now, this month, or this quarter, and what does done look like?
Which bucket are we working from right now, and what does done look like? That is incredibly revealing.
It is.
Because if the room gets quiet, or people start giving you 5 different answers, or they start explaining how they are actually doing a little bit of all three,
Then you don't have a clean answer. And if the answer isn't completely clean, Your team is definitively buried in all three buckets simultaneously, wondering why they are working so hard but moving so slowly.
But the blog also offers a vital bit of reassurance here, which I think is important to highlight. Feeling this overwhelmed, experiencing this specific paradox, it isn't necessarily a sign that your team is incompetent or failing at AI.
Not at all. Experiencing this paradox is actually a very positive indicator.
Yeah.
Yeah, it means the AI is working, you are finally seeing all the things that were historically broken, and you finally have an appetite you've never had before to fix them. These are exciting times for infrastructure teams. The appetite itself is a good thing.
The critical mistake is just how leadership reacts to that appetite.
Exactly. The failure is creating that new appetite, like permission to work on everything at once. You must give AI a real mandate.
Right.
Give your team something they can actually close, rather than handing them a constantly rotating cast of half-started, vaguely defined problems. Pick a bucket. Define what done looks like. Finish something. Then and only then, move to the next.
And for companies trying to figure out how to navigate all of this, especially growth stage companies dealing with complex cloud infrastructure or AI readiness, who might not have that internal gatekeeper role fully defined, yeah, this is exactly where outside perspective becomes crucial.
It is. The blog notes that bringing in a partner like Rhythmic isn't just about finding someone who knows how to do the technical work.
Right. There are plenty of people who know how to write code.
Exactly. The true value of that outside perspective is in advising you on what the work should actually be. They help you figure out the portfolio-level sequencing when you are simply too close to the chaos to see it clearly.
Because when you are trapped inside the everything everywhere all at once whirlwind, your natural instinct is just to try and run faster inside the chaos.
Yeah, you just pedal faster.
You need someone standing on the outside to say, stop, you are in bucket 1, finish it before you even look at bucket 3.
Exactly. The companies that emerge from this transitional period successfully aren't necessarily the ones with the most expensive enterprise tools or the biggest AI budgets. They are the ones with the structural discipline to sequence their way through the chaos.
It's about having a strategy for the appetite, not just feeding it constantly and hoping you don't burst.
This raises an important question, something really profound to think about as we wrap up.
Okay.
If an endless appetite is the real danger here, perhaps the true mark of a company's AI maturity isn't how many advanced agentic tools they've managed to deploy, or how many complex workflows they've automated.
What is it then?
Perhaps the real measure of maturity is how many AI projects they have the discipline to intentionally say no to.
Wow. That is a phenomenal point to leave off on. Are you mature enough to say no to the shiny new object so you can actually finish fixing the foundation?
Exactly.
Something for you to deeply consider as you review your own team's roadmap this week and figure out which of those 3 buckets is quietly draining your energy. Just a quick note for you before we go that this conversation was generated from Rhythmic's blog post using AI. If you want to read the full original post, understand this paradox deeper, and explore how they help growth stage companies navigate these exact infrastructure and readiness questions, head over to rhythmictech.com.